from every as the sites evolve, they'll continue to ban them and they'll just keep moving.
Yeah, but then we won't know where they're working.
No, that's not true. We'll be able to find them. We will be able to find them. They're bad at being
sneaky. It's a lot harder than you think.
No, it's not. They suck at being sneaky. They're really bad at it.
Well, now there's this. Now this is alternative in Parler, right? Like it's basically like no one left wing really hangs out on Parler. They have just this right wing space where we can watch them, and they can't really spread their theories. I think it is good to get them off Facebook and get them off Twitter because that really was allowing them to spread their ideologies further. Whereas Parler, it's just kind of they're trapped in a loop, spreading it to one another, and we have the ability to both look at them and then not spread it any further than that. Though I do think there's issues with the fact that like we can't control like TikTok, for example, and TikTok has loads and loads of QAnon people on it, and we have no real way of banning it because it's a private entity that doesn't want to ban them.
Leftist community too, who often will reply or whatever directly to the QAnon people.
Yeah, but they have a flawed epistemology, so they're fucked anyway. You can't convince them out of it. So they literally just need to be banned from that platform so they can't spread it to more like literal teenagers.
Yeah, 100%. I'm just saying that when they're going to do it, and they're like, if someone makes a reply video or whatever and is debunking it, at least someone's going to be able to see that. They're not necessarily going to join QAnon. It's not going to add any more people to it. But yeah, they should 100% be banned off TikTok too.
Okay, go ahead, Peace. Go.
Yeah, I also feel that I don't know how many of you are conservatives on this stream, but you're assuming that these corporations and these social media platforms, I don't know how much you assume this, but maybe you are, should be doing what's in the interest of the most amount of people. Those of you who fancy yourselves conservatives or free market oriented, is that your belief that business must always cater to the good for the most people? Or do you feel like a lot of free market and libertarian people that they have obligations to themselves and their own maximization of utility? Does anyone?
In an ideal
world, I'll take that one. I see it from both ways at the same time because I'm a conservative, but I also seem to have some weird leanings in other directions. Libertarianism is one of them.
I wouldn't say weird leanings. I'd say inconsistency.
Yeah, but like for business, I'm very much so laissez-faire when it comes to business. People should just stay the fuck out of my business. I want to do what's best for my people. And
that's totally inconsistent, right?
Yeah,
with the notion that these social media companies, we should really be maximizing the ability to, even if we assume that your whatever dumb method you proposed was the best way to like stop radicalism and extremism. Even if we assumed that, you're assuming a principle also that that's what these corporations should be doing. I thought laissez-faire and free market people thought that that's not what they should be doing. We shouldn't be maximizing social good.
I mean,
that's not one and the same. Social good and laissez-faire. You can have laissez-faire and still have social good. Like,
no.
For instance, no, absolutely. Because, for instance, for my staff, I pay for their health care, but my health care and insurance isn't socialized. But they have better health care now than they had.
I don't think you know what laissez-faire means.
So, it's hands off from the government.
These are the two principles colliding. One is a principle of libertarianism, which it's my business. I can do whatever I want with it. And I just have the freedom to do it because that's just the way it is. That's the libertarianism, right? My house, my rules, that kind of thing. And the other is that, all components of society should be calibrated to maximize utility for the most amount of people. And they conflict because at any given point, right, there are people here who say, I don't care if guns cause, more damage. I don't know that they do. I'm not assuming they do. Even if guns do cause more damage, it's just my right to own and have them. So that's, I think, a microcosm of the bigger issue here. There's a conflicting principle where libertarianism isn't coinciding with maximizing social good.
Well, not all conservatives, and this is kind of the issue here, are libertarians. Some of them, and that's, you brought up, like, is anyone a conservative in here, right? Well, if you ask a true conservative, right, someone who identifies with what, like, definitionally would be a conservative, right? You're going to run into the problem of, well, they don't care as much about freedoms as they do about conserving a singular identity of something, right? Whatever identity that may be in their particular country. And then the libertarians care more about like liberalism, right, as a concept and access to certain freedoms, right, that they believe are a part of their rights. And then the other issue is not that many people are regular people are thinking about politics in these hard definitions. They're just doing what they think feels.
I'm not trying to
contradictions, like I think you would probably agree with.
But the contradictions are bad, and they need to be called out. So what I was looking for is, in any other circumstance, when the government comes and tells a business what to do, it's like, no, you really have to do this for the public good. You really have to stop selling big soda cans, and you really have to, you can't sell supersized fries anymore. You guys all scoff at that. I don't want to say you guys, a lot of conservatives who are free market oriented scoff at those kind of regulations and say, we don't have a responsibility for the public good. But now in the context of social media, these social media companies need to bend their own maximization of their liberties to what's good for society. And it seems totally inconsistent with the other principle. Does that make sense? I'm not trying to put you in the categories.
I see where you're going at, but in all liberal societies, we try to control externalities. We try to regulate to some degree. It isn't consistent a lot of times because we don't have the power to force consistency.
Well, it could foreseeably be consistent, it's just not consistent with the idea of if your ultimate is laissez-faire capitalism, right? So the thing is that people can hold values at different scales, right? So I could believe guns are an inherent right and everyone should have guns, and also believe we should repress someone else, right, for their specific views or religion or anything else. You may not just value freedom as this axis, which I think is a big issue in the United States. Among Republicans and Democrats, right and left, right, revolves around people saying we are the land of the free, right? We believe we are these free people with these unalienable rights. But a lot of times their actual political axis doesn't lay on, well, I value all freedoms. Right?
Yeah, okay. I want to address the point. I don't want to. So you've said that just because you believe in some freedom doesn't mean your continuum is plastic enough to consider all possible freedoms, and you might disagree that something is a freedom. So now you have to have the unfortunate task, I'm afraid, of explaining why social media companies deserve less freedom or less rights than other companies like oil companies or food companies. Why are these companies? Why the specific harm from social media companies deserving of infringement on their whatever you think their liberty is interest, whereas things like fracking or things like fast food, these things shouldn't be organized. Leave it to the free market.
Well, that's the thing.
I would argue that those should also be treated the same way.
So you're consistent.
Yeah. Wait, no, that's only if you believe they should all be left to the free market, though. People probably don't have those beliefs when you actually question them further.
Well, let me ask. So, Falinor, what would you think of a policy that said, for instance, all fast food chains will be required to post nutritional information, and they're not allowed to sell French fries anymore?
Well, I would think it'd be an infringement on their capitalistic nature.
Okay.
And it's the same thing as with social media platforms, though.
Okay.
They're publishers.
So is this a specific critique of Fallon, or is it a critique of conservatism?
Well, I heard him say some dumb stuff, so I wanted to question it, and so it's sort of panning out how I thought.
So just to draw a line here, I was confused because you said conservatives, right? So I was trying to lean into their perspective, show how they think, rather than specifically target Fallon.
I mean, I'm also a conservative. I'd like to throw this out there. Like I personally feel it is our duty as the consumer to hold these corporations responsible. Like things like cancel culture and deplatforming. Like I respect these things because I think they're almost like an expansion of freedom of speech for us. And so I think that like if we want the McDonald's to put the calorie intake on their French fries, like it's up to us to hold them responsible for that and say like, hey, if you don't start doing these things, we're going to stop consuming your product.
Never worked.
Okay, but that's not what's being advocated. What's being advocated for right now is, you could say that honestly, what's happening right now is on the other side, that other people are demanding of their companies more regulation, and that's precisely what's happening. But what I think that you're missing is what's being demanded is government intervention and government control and government taking away of liability shields of these institutions, or of treating them as public fora, where the First Amendment
applies.
Are
public fora.
They're not public fora.
Well, if we're talking about public policy, I don't know if
not public fora. Wait, who said that public fora?
Hold on. So like
they have in multiple court arguments.
No, they haven't. I don't know what cite one, sir.
I'll pull them up. Which
Cite
one,
one, sir.
Print
It
them out.
doesn't exist.
Go
It
ahead.
doesn't exist.
If we're
The thing
talking
is,
about-
though,
Go ahead, Tom.
What is his background? Are you a lawyer, sir? No.
if we're talking about
Right.
public policy, though, right? There seems to be this issue here that I don't think you're understanding is that like one of the tenets of Trumpism and why he was elected into office, right, seems to be that people wanted Republicans that didn't care as much about the deficit and things like that, right? That weren't norm Republicans. Literally, he was breaking against the grain of the Republican Party of being more fiscally conservative per se, right? And he's acted very much as a kind of I don't want to say blue dog Democrat, but
So this is
certainly
a platitude about like who cares?
being more socially conservative.
How is this relevant to our discussion?
How is it relevant? It's describing the modern conservative movement, which is what you seem to have been criticizing.
Well, Pisco has
Describe it
said
to you
that
so you
it's,
understand it.
Pisco says this isn't happening,
Yeah,
but
that's-
I think it is happening when they start deplatforming Donald Trump, or they start taking down accounts and they start taking down people's posts. Like, that means that it is happening. That means that consumers are holding people like Twitter accountable.
Yeah, they are.
That they are holding.
Yes, the consumers on the side of against Trump. They're the ones who are demanding of their, they're using the free market or however you want to call it, their consumer power to pressure these companies.
Right.
And
So it does work, and
I
it
don't
does
even know
happen.
if that's the case of what's happening there, though. I think Twitter, at the very least, has at least some sort of semblance of worry that they might be liable for what he is posting on there. I don't know if that's actually the case, but
Well, maybe they have social consciousness. On the show,
that,
basically.
yeah,
I don't. Yeah,
I
you're right.
really don't think it's like, oh well, if we don't delete Donald Trump off of Twitter, people might stop using our platform. We'll lose money. I really don't.
They might be
There's
worried about
absolute-
legislation.
There's absolutely no precedent for that, though. Nobody's been held accountable. There's no reason for them to think that. It is the consumers that feel as though these things should be taking place. We should be protecting trans people online. So they start putting this stuff into their rules.
There was
I
I promise you, there was no sort of organization even starting to be like, if they don't ban Trump from Twitter,
we'll boycott them.
Yeah, but
that doesn't exist.
It's not.
That wasn't happening.
It's not the consumers, right?
It's the consumer. We're the consumer, right?
Yeah, it's not the
We're the
consumers.
product, but
It's not the consumers that they're scared of losing, right? It's similar to when they had the YouTube adpocalypse, right? They're actually just scared of losing advertisers because advertisers don't want to be associated with like shitty people. So they don't want their ads to come up next to Donald Trump. So you still have Donald Trump on your platform. They won't give you ads anymore. So that's what they're like running in fear of. It's not consumers.
I still don't think that was even discussed. As far as
it doesn't matter if it's all reducible. Whatever the pathway is, whether it's through they're fearful of legislation or they're fearful of advertisers or they're fearful of direct consumer action. If it's all translatable to like their dollars and cents, then in some extent, Tom is correct that it's them worrying about backlash from whatever the consumer market is. Or maybe there's a genuine.
We're not worried about backlash, though. Twitter just demonstrated that today with their stock already tanking from their initial ban process.
Stupid evidence to point for that. So you think that just because short run profits are hit, therefore they're not looking for their own economic interest? That is a profoundly ignorant way to look at any
cutting a large source of their ad revenue, which is estimated at 30 to 54% of their user base, which is ad revenue source based.
So
didn't we already make this same mistake? Didn't we already make this same mistake with Nike and Kaepernick, where we
Gillette? Yeah, who took a haircut? Nike took a haircut. Gillette
very short
$8
haircut.
billion write down.
Very
$8 billion
short
write down is not a joke.
You are so naive.
Nike is ahead of where they were.
Naive.
It didn't last. They didn't last.
The boycott for Gillette is still ongoing. I don't buy Gillette products anymore.
Well, okay,
a lot of
you
people
I do.
Yeah, a lot of people that I know don't use Gillette products anymore. My wife doesn't use Gillette products.
The time frame of this is so bananas. Like corporations make decisions not just. I know this might seem crazy to a lot of left-wing people, not just thinking about like the next 6 months or the next year. There are a lot of things down the line that corporations prepare themselves for. And so a lot of these decisions, I think, should be seen with that in mind, with a longer time horizon than what you're suggesting.
Yeah, they didn't all start supporting Black Lives Matter for no reason. Like, these sort of things are profitable to them, and they do that because it's profitable to them. And it lasts. It works out lasting that way.
So my memory may be breaking here, but I'm pretty sure Twitter only saw its first profitable year in like 2019, and I'm pretty sure they've
never been profitable.
Wait, hold on, no. In 2019, they had their first profitable year. I'm almost certain.
But they're not very profitable. Their margins are razor thin.
Finish my statement, please, person. Thank you. So just like, and they've been losing users as well, right? They've been losing users before this. Right, and they've been losing users while they get a profit. I don't think users necessarily translates into a profit margin, and you can see this through a variety of different platforms that choose to be exclusionary on the basis that it'll make them more money, right, than having the most people there. So I think that's something to consider. Just because millions of users are leaving the platform doesn't mean they'll be less profitable. And as a corporation, that is
Facebook proves that false. Outright, Facebook proves that false.
How?
The larger number of users that you have directly translates to ad revenue. The more people that you can market to, the more people that you could sell ad revenue for.
You're thinking this in a totally backwards way. What is the value to Twitter of not having to lose their protections or whatever the protections is because there's widespread consumer sentiment that they need to be regulated more? That's worth something to Twitter. You have to think of these things more than just revenue and cost. They're thinking about other things when they make the decisions that affect their bottom line, but in ways that you're not considering.
Yeah, but they've already got protections like that already pre-exist.
They don't want to lose them, right?
No, I'm saying protections from stuff like you're trying to hint towards, like the 230 protection being stripped away, which then creates liability for media content being posted on their platform that they can get litigated against. That protection already exists and has existed for decades.
They want to guess what they're doing. I mean, like, you guys can do the argument with me. Who's going to be in power for the next 2 years in Congress and government? The Democrats. What are they doing? They're purchasing some goodwill with Democrats who are going to have complete legislative control. And Democrats aren't all pro big tech and big social media. There are a lot of Democrats and the liberal left, like Bernie Sanders, who criticize and AOC big tech and social media all the time. So, don't be naive and think that this was a totally stupid thing for them to do, or they're not looking in their own self-interest. They are.
But then they have a 2-year time horizon to sell before the very potential likelihood of another change of power, where the group that comes back is coming back with a vengeance.
Maybe they see the writing on the wall. Maybe they see the writing on the wall. And this was a horrible look for Republicans. That's going to doom them. I don't know if it's doom them. It'll severely negatively affect them in the next elections. And
they're pissed.
I don't know.
You just give them a rally flag. That's the worst thing you can do.
What?
Yeah, this is going to be used. This whole thing, this whole invasion of the Capitol, this terrorist activity, that entire saga will be used by Democrats for years. You're never going to stop hearing about this. And it's the biggest gift to the left and Democrats that you've ever seen.
Yeah, and they're going to respond, which already has happened, where it's like, oh, well, you've got guys walking single file down a hallway and you have a literal federal building on fire on the background. BLM Antifa versus
I'm not analyzing.
It's not even
whataboutism to say that BLM is. Yeah, BLM is. It is not. Attacking a private business is nowhere close to attacking
I just said a federal building.
Hang on, stop. We're not talking about the merits of the underlying action. I am explaining to you the politics of the corporation and what they're thinking and what their horizon is. I'm not making a merit, even though I do think your comparison is totally perverse and distasteful and disgusting, to be honest with you. That said, I wasn't analyzing the merits of each one of the responses or what political capital should have been put in any given situation. I was just simply stating that it is a fact that people are freaking out about this instance, and I think tech companies are seeing the writing on the wall.
But they can't do anything.
Yeah, even still, like on the when they're running like ad campaigns, I think the average American is going to tell the difference between people storming and occupying our Capitol towards like Black Lives Matter. Like very few people are even comparing the two. Like I don't know why people keep comparing it. Like Democrat, like.
He just said it because he heard me call the people who invaded our Capitol terrorists, and he wanted to talk about BLM. But we're not talking about the merits of the underlying. If you want to do that, we can, and you can defend your terrorist buddies who invaded the Capitol.
So a part of this probably has to do with how they look at metadata on their platform, specifically like click-through rates for people, right? So I'm wondering specifically, what if Democrats just have a higher click-through rate and interaction with their platform than Republican-leaning people who
They
have
don't.
those opinions.
They
Because
don't.
it is important to notice that the type of I don't know if you guys have noticed this. I certainly have. The type of Republican that really engages with Twitter and engages with the mainstream kind of political Twitter, right, are like the Republicans who aren't absolutely like Trumpism, right? There's people like this guy Neon Taster, Ben Shapiro, right? Try and distance themselves from Trump, right?
No,
Or
Ben,
engaging with the larger
not Ben
crowd.
Ben is
Shapiro.
always
But
anti-Trump.
He's very distant from Trump, regardless of how
He's
much we
always been.
dislike his politics.
I'm sorry. No.
Yeah,
He is-
he is.
no, Ben Shapiro is distant from Trump for sure. He
I'm
tried
sure
to say
you
it in
guys
arm's
will
length.
say that, but I listen
You
to Ben
guys,
Shapiro
I'm a social
for-
democrat. Sorry.
Well,
Not one of those guys.
I listened to Ben Shapiro for the
everyone
last
is.
3 years, like not necessarily daily, but fucking close. He doesn't distance himself from Trump. Maybe over the last couple weeks he has, but
No,
the-
he's always like had a statement in, before ever agreeing with Trump to say like, I don't really like this guy, or I'm
yeah,
not
is that
fully on board
genuine?
with
Do you
him. Like,
actually trust
no,
that?
I
he's
don't,
putting
but I'm
distance,
saying
though,
that
between
is
himself and-
yes,
and Trump.
correct. Mhm.
And he literally said to his audience, "I'm not voting for Trump in 2016." He literally said
Yeah.
that to not
Hey, do
like,
you,
if that's not him
he
attempting to
voted for him in
draw
2020.
and become distinct. I don't
I don't know who
agree
he
with that.
voted for in
He
2020.
did.
He voted for him
He
in
did
2020.
vote. He did.
He
vote.
talked about it a lot.
But he's been drawing distance between him and Trump, and he's now continuing to do it again now that Trump has lost the election.
It's almost
He-
like
he's
it's
trying to play
beneficial
both
for
sides.
him to
And
do
so,
so,
and
isn't
so
it?
Twitter can, and the point of this is to say that Twitter can recognize that it's not going to lose all its conservative audience. It's just losing like the crazy Trumpers, right? So like, and those people aren't interacting with the platform probably in the way they'd like. So I don't think it's that much of a loss for them in the first place. And now that the opportunity of they no longer have the threat of Trump repealing certain statutes, right, or attempting to repeal, he probably wouldn't have been successful in any of those actions, you're saying. But now that that's gone, they just don't have any pressure to let him or his audience stay on the platform anymore. I think it's really simple, but kind of complex in how they come to that reason.
So Mark's. Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Mark's, go ahead. You've been trying to jump in for a while.
Oh no, I said something earlier.
Okay, all right. Go ahead, Latex then.
So I just wanted to say one thing about like we're saying like the tech giants all dumped, but in reality, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, they all wanted to, but they weren't going to until Twitter did. Because once Twitter does it, they get all the buzz and they can go in their shadow and no one really gives a shit. And so, like, I mean, you
The
look at
first one to
Twitter.
dump was Shopify.
Okay, and how many people are talking about that? And then when Twitter
Literally, I
does
don't
it,
even know what Shopify is.
The sites that sell Trump stuff, right? Discord did it too. I think for one of the subreddits, or sorry, Discords. Reddit did it too. Everyone's jumping the shit, like doing it now, and they have power numbers because, well, I don't know. Well, Twitter suspended him for 12 hours or whatever, and then Trump tweeted like 2 other things, and they decided to ban him forever. So I don't know. I feel like there's a broader recognition that what Trump said, it was dangerous and insightful, and that has been reflected in these big techs companies stop and like not putting up with it anymore. And if you want to call that out and you have problems with that, you have problems with the free market.
Okay then.
Pretty much, yeah. I have problems with free market, but not in this scenario.
Yeah. Fuck the free market.
Damn.
Oh.
Fuck the free market, but this time it's cool.
What?
Unironically.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys went over this earlier, but does anybody think that this sort of deplatforming was unjustified or unwarranted?
Someone thinks that it's actually a public forum, and so they break the First Amendment apparently by doing this, right, Falinor? I mean, what was the case law? Were you looking that up?
Yeah, I pulled it up for you. There's several cases.
Yeah, show me.
That law.
Where they actually argued, the companies argued that their platforms.
Are you talking about like litigants' briefs? You're citing to that as case law? Please tell me you're not doing that. Just because I argue something,
I'm a little peeved from that conversation still because I didn't hear the word scrutiny once and how that changes whether or not something is going to be.
Oh no, he was trying to get me on some kind of bastardized version of standing where he said like every statute needs to have an injury and also a remedy, missing the third component of constitutional Article 3 standing, which is fairly traceable. So it's not in redressability. And also, the Article 3 standing argument he was making wasn't relevant to our conversation about First Amendment jurisprudence and public forest stuff. And also, it only applies to federal court.
No, because no. So here's the first problem right here. Right? You're trying to rattle off a bunch of legalese to confuse people to make yourself sound smarter. So I'm just going to address this right now. All right, shut up. I'm going to speak right now. All right, so here's the problem. We were talking about something that was applied federally. You can't challenge a federal issue in a state court.
Oh,
you have to
oh my God! Have you heard of the Madison Compromise? You don't know anything about what you're talking. Have you taken a federal courts class in your life?
Variant to the federal issue.
No, so stop.
So federal issue. You know that escalated to federal court.
Stop. So you know that state courts are competent to deal with federal causes of action, correct? State courts hear federal claims all the time. The Constitution doesn't require any lower federal courts. In fact, for years, the primary forum for federal issues was state courts. And recently we have, district courts. That's not required. And so your whole standing argument, as well as being irrelevant, and you're the one bringing up this legal shit that no one wants to talk about. I want to talk about the substance of the First Amendment claims. You're saying the standing shit wrong, and you're applying it way more broadly than it is to make yourself seem smarter. So again, that entire digression previously was so stupid.
No, it's not. You're wrong. I tell you what. I got $5 fucking grand is safe right here. I bet $5 grand against your ass. $5 grand. I will pick up the phone and fucking call Judge Moss. He's a court just magistrate in this region. We'll see what he fucking says.
What's Article 3 standing? What's standing?
I'm not a lawyer. I don't need to know all that
shit.
So
shut up about injury and redressability and all that stuff if you don't know it. It's not relevant to the substantive merits claims.
It is. No. Hang on. You wanted to rattle all this shit off, and then I call you out on your bullshit, and now you don't want to stick it. You don't want to fucking stick it. Pick up $5 grand, put it on the fucking table. I'll go get mine.
I don't know what are we betting? What are we betting?
Remediations. And it has to have a form of injury. You have to have harm or injury, and it has to have remediations. All cases. That's what I said.
There's 3 requirements.
I said 2 minimums that you had to have remediation. And you said that I said there was at least 2. You're saying there's 3. You were saying I was wrong. And that's where you fucked up.
You're not even
I'm calling you on your bullshit, and you don't want to fucking own it. And that's your fucking issue, like every other fucking attorney. And this is the problem. And I'm looking at Jared Taylor v. Twitter, where Twitter openly claimed they were a fucking platform in the case. The case went through. Section 230, they claimed they were protected under Section 230. And you're fucking saying
you're filibustering.
Okay.
You're filibustering.
Okay.
I called you out of your bullshit.
Okay.
And it's ridiculous.
This is stupid.
You're a lady. Go ahead, talk.
Okay, yeah. So basically, I don't think he should have been banned from Twitter either, right? Because I don't actually think he broke the TOS on the platform. I think he broke, so the idea is that he incited that riot. I don't think he incited the riot on the platform. I think he did that in real life.
It's not that he incited the riot on the platform. Real quick, he didn't just incite the riot on the platform. Afterwards, he posted a video of them breaking into the Capitol saying, "I love these people." He's not. Afterwards, he's encouraging this sort of behavior. That is the problem. He is encouraging violence after the fact.
Yeah, that's not what happened. Him creating that conspiracy and still contributing to it would also count as inciting violence.
He told them that he loved them, right, and told them to go home.
On Twitter.
They're very special.
Yes, on
Twitter. Very special. He was
but he told them to go home in the same video. He told them to go home, right? So he can love people that do bad things.
But he did it right above a video of them breaking into the Capitol. That's not the same thing. The two are connected once he does that.
And he told them to go home.
No, but he kept on repeating the claim that brought them there in the first place, which is this lie about election fraud.
Yeah, but if
they believe.
If I say like there's an evil potato in Parliament, right, and then a bunch of people go and storm my Parliament, I don't feel like I should be held personally responsible for every other person that goes and storms the Parliament, right? Like just because they're fucking idiots, unless he specifically tells them to go and do that action, which is something he did in real life but didn't do on Twitter. And he's not responsible.
You have an attachment to formalism that I don't understand. So they literally have to be the whole and sum of every action of incitement needs to be totally encapsulated and encircled by their interactions on Twitter, and that is the bare minimum for you to be banned on the platform. No other context seems to matter to your assessment. I think that's a totally
like if he says go storm the Capitol, right, and then they go storm the Capitol, well, at the point where he said go storm the Capitol, he should have been banned from Twitter. But he hasn't actually done that on Twitter at all. All he's done is like continue with his conspiracy theory, which I actually truly believe that Trump believes.
I don't care if he believes it or not. The question is whether or not the continued communications on Twitter played into a greater context that he created and that he's responsible for, and he is, and those communications do. And to the extent that those communications, absent his incitement in previous public discourse, would have been innocuous, like I don't care. We live in the reality we do, and those communications. Okay. I
think you should be able to deny the legitimacy of an election, right, without getting banned from Twitter because people decide to take action on it.
It's
okay.
It's very relevant to them being an American company. Like, there's been plenty of instances of even the United States saying certain democratic elections were illegitimate. I'm sure they've done it on Twitter, right? Like some of our.
What's relevant to this conversation is whether or not Twitter is a public forum and not about these broken ideas of standing. So again, I wanted to ask Mr. Fallinor,
and I gave you the case, Jared Taylor Twitter. Where Jared Taylor v. Twitter, where they openly Twitter declared that they were a platform, therefore protected under Section 230. That was their legal argument. That was the legal argument.
So understand, there are three different things you're conflating here. One is the conflation between a platform and a public forum. You know what a public forum is?
Yes.
What's a public forum?
Yes. A public forum is a public space for people to have discourse and discussions and have just generic freedoms of speeches and other freedoms. Now, here's the thing. In this case here specifically, hang on, let me wrap it for you. Jared Taylor v. Twitter, they argued that they were specifically a platform. However, in other cases, they've argued that they're public forums. And this is the issue fundamentally.
They would never do that. They would never do it.
I've got lists of cases.
You've
got Charles Johnson v. Twitter, Jared Taylor v. Twitter, Greg Britton v. Twitter, federal agents.
Tom, stop filibustering.
Can you cite the specific language?
I'm stating all the cases. These are entire cases. You can pull
what I'm looking at is in one of these case briefs, I'm assuming there's going to be the word saying they viewed themselves as a public forum.
They would never say that.
Saying that, or Twitter being quoted in that case brief, because case briefs will contain specific language used to have certain justifications for things. Right?
There's so many, so I can't read through them all.
Any benefit.
So you could F3 them right now and look up the word public forum until you find it.
I'd have to pull up other cases.
Wait, Fallon, you have a more basic problem. Are all platforms public forums?
Are all platforms public forums? No, they're private institutions.
Okay, so then why are you mentioning the platform language in a conversation about public fora?
Because when you say that you're a platform, and then you say you're a public forum, and then you say you're a platform, and then you say you're a publisher, you're changing your story in each court case that you run into to whatever.
Have you read the case brief, or are you working off someone else's opinion of the case brief? Just out of curiosity.
Can you put it in the chat, please? Just paste what you think you're citing where Twitter says it's a public fora. I'll give you a fucking hint. It'll never call itself a public fora, because if it calls itself a public fora, all sorts of shit apply to it now. And it has to now respect people's free speach.
That's been the problem, is they flip-flop. That's been the universal argument.
No. They can't just flip-flop. They have to actually use this label in everything that they do. They can't flip-flop. It's not just for court cases. It's something that they actually assign to themselves with the government.
So
that too, like you're conflating. One is a legislative designation by the part of the Communications Act that says who has a liability shield or not, and that is totally different and separate apart from constitutional public fora analysis. One is a statutory analysis on, and the other is a constitutional one about the First Amendment, which doesn't care about the designation from Congress. If it's a public forum, it's a public forum, and whatever Congress says about platform versus publisher, which is in the language in the statute, has no object. It isn't relevant to the public forum.
What can solve this maybe is calling the judge, right? I mean, that's an option.
He's not gonna judge. He's not gonna call a judge to like some 3L that I know from Twitch schooled me on standing when I did. So
Look, Prime. I was promised that this guy was going to wake up this judge at 4 a.m. to prove Pisco wrong on Twitch, and I am going to use my mute that I have saved on him unless he fucking does it. So that's where we're at.
Yeah.
All right, hang on. I'll call Moss.
Okay.
Oh, please! There's no way he does it.
Oh, you better fucking believe it.
Do it.
Judge. Oh, I'm so happy right now. Okay,
Is he a
I'm
state
gonna
judge?
myself again. You guys have fun with this.
Is he a state judge or a federal judge?
He's a state.
Okay, what state? Or do you? I mean,
Georgia.
The state of Georgia. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm in Georgia.
It is.
Yeah.
It is like almost 5 a.m. in Georgia. You're gonna call this judge right now?
Yeah,
It
I'll
is.
try.
This is-
Whether he answers or not's another story. I ain't calling Judge Dillard though. That dude gets mad. You wake his ass up.
Oh my god.
There's no way you gotta do this to people.
was
Because I
looking
didn't bring
for
up
his
standing. I didn't bring up standing. He brought up standing. He said it wrong, and then now he's saying he schooled me on it. It's totally wild.
I said there's at least two components.
No one says there's at least two components of standing. Everyone knows.
I did. That's exactly what I said. I said there's
No.
at least two components.
You saying
and
there's
he
at
said,
least
"No,
two
it's
components?
wrong."
You saying there's at least two components shows that you don't know shit. Because
Roll the VOD. Roll the VOD. I said there's at least two.
I love it when Pisco puts his legal dick on the table.
I can't even find my
this is
fucking
amazing.
phone.
Also,
I need to charge my other phone. Give me
it
a
doesn't
second.
matter because he brought it up and he's accusing me of bringing up legalese to look smart. He brought up standing when we're talking about the merits of the First Amendment, which standing isn't a merits discussion. It's a justiciability Article 3 component of like subject matter jurisdiction. It's not a question on the merits. That's weren't the Trumpers all complaining that they never read our cases on the merits, they only did standing. So we wouldn't bring up standing when we're addressing the merits of the public forum analysis.
Yeah. Also, if I can add in, I'll put it in the chat. But basically, they've tried to make the arguments. A bunch of federal district courts from various states like New York, Illinois, Kentucky have tried to make the argument that Twitter is a public forum, but they've all failed.
They failed, and
yeah,
you wouldn't cite litigants' briefs. Like briefs will say crazy shit. If you just cite briefs, I could cite the Kraken as an argument that like Hugo Chavez actually did whatever. So like I don't know what I mean. One thing that would be compelling is if Twitter called itself a public forum, but of course it wouldn't be dispositive because Twitter isn't a court. They're not the Supreme Court. They can't just say for all social media, they're all public fora. So it doesn't have the ability to be at all authoritative on that. And also, I know Twitter would never say that because it would be really, really bad for Twitter to say that.
Yeah, I put it in chat. It's a
Colin, can you cite even a holding of a specific case here, right?
It doesn't exist. I know.
The holding is their conclusion, right? What they held.
I have to pull it up on Pacer, but yeah, I could read it to you.
Yeah.
Pacer, pull it up on fucking Westlaw.
Some vague notion of what was
Westlaw.
said.
Why would I use Westlaw like pull up what the judges said?
Because what the judges say, that's like the law part, and like looking up briefs and shit is actually not where you get the law, and you get it from like appellate court decisions and shit like that. I know, like when you go to law school, you'll figure that out. And the distinction between like a litigant's brief and a court opinion might seem really tenuous to you right now, but I promise you, there's a big difference.
I
How
know.
do we go to law school?
I helped build Pacer. You're talking down in a condescending tone. I built the system you use. Yeah.
Oh my God! You think that makes you an authority on whether or not something is a public forum or not, or whether or not you can cite a specific?
How it works.
Okay, but
because I loaded literally everything into it.
Whether or not you load data, honestly,
that's an SQL transaction.
Yeah, it's not relevant to the legal analysis and how
a simple system.
Whether it's authoritative or not. The brief of Twitter's brief is authoritative on anything. And also, you were citing their statutory argument about whether they're, I don't even know what the case is, whether they fit into a particular statutory framework. That's not relevant either to the constitutional for analysis. You recognize that, right?
What happened to the phone call?
Yeah, I'm missing that too. Oh, okay.
I was just thinking, I've been sitting here with this mute that I said that I was going to use unless this judge gets called, and it's still not been called yet, so I'm about to whip out the fucking mute, and you just shut up for 10 minutes, yeah?
It's 19 TAC CV,
Unless you'd
TAC
like to call the judge.
0114 TAC YGR.
What's that? Are you citing some...
I think that's the right one. Sorry, no, it's CV 18-01714 PHX.
Oh my God. Please. Are you citing the case number to me? Give me the the case reporter. Give me like the name of the parties. What are you talking about?
I did give you that already. I said Craig Britton v. Twitter. You've already given all this stuff. Come on.
What's the case called?
What side are you sitting on here now, man? That was David Campbell.
David
presiding judge.
What court is this? What court is this?
That's in district court.
What district court?
Hang on, I'm pulling it up now.
I just don't know why you're not citing things from this document rather than just like telling. Go
Just
look it up.
It's a couple numbers, and it's a case.
Text. Here, I'll drop you the case text.
Yeah,
here's one of them.
Yeah, throw it in chat or
General.
VC chat. One on the other. Yeah, sure.
Or something.
Here's just one of them where they flip flop. Are they a publisher? I'm turning my phone on. Fuck it, dude. Holy shit, slow down.
Okay, you're Agent 10. Who's Agent 10?
No, he's not Agent 10. That's
all
right. This guy's Fallen there.
Okay.
That's Britain. That's what they argued, that they had protections under 230, that they weren't a publisher.
Where's the
there
link?
are other argument cases where they've claimed that they are a publisher.
Where's the link? I'll look at it in 5 seconds and I'll debunk whatever you're saying.
This should be impressive. Wow, 5 seconds.
Where's the link?
I already gave it to you in general. I told you that.
In general. All right.
Find yourself
cool.
time or what?
What is wrong? Someone said post it in voice text. What is wrong with people not being
Downloading PDF? Oh. I'll go on mute for just 1 second. I guess only a minute.
When are we ringing the judge?
Yeah, we're still waiting on that.
Hang on. That phone's on now. Let me get my other one.
Yeah. Why do you need to get your other one?
I need another phone. Yeah, I have multiple phones, don't you?
Yeah, but can't you just use one of the phones? You don't need 2 phones to ring someone.
No,
why can't you just use it while it's charging? Can't you just is your charging like wire really short or?
I was interested.
Yeah, just
I was
use it while it's
interested
charging.
in Nell's argument for why Trump shouldn't be taken off of Twitter.
Well, yeah, like he didn't break their TOS.
Right.
They just took him off because they felt like it. Like
inciting violence. Doesn't inciting violence mean that he broke the TOS?
She doesn't believe he incited violence.
Yeah, I don't think he incited violence.
Well,
I think he just spoke about a conspiracy theory. I mean, like technically they can just remove somebody for the platform for any reason they like, but they did cite a specific part of their TOS when they did it, which was to do with inciting violence, and I don't think he actually did that.
Yeah.
If you start the conspiracy theory that leads a bunch of people to go bust down a door to a Capitol building, does that not mean that you incited violence?
He didn't start that conspiracy theory, though. Just to be clear, he enabled it, right? That's
yeah. You just spoke about it. I mean, on that basis,
no. He was saying that there was going to be voter fraud long before there was ever even an election. He started that conspiracy theory for sure.
True.
Okay,
we have a big problem, Falinor. What you just gave me is an order dismissing without prejudice some case because the shit was like the complaint was like too long. I don't know what this is. I control F for public forum. I control F for publisher, for platform. Yeah. None of the bullshit you talked about. This is being dismissed for like procedural reasons.
And this is one of the cases where Twitter, in their legal argument, claimed that they were protected as a platform because they were specifically being sued because they were being claimed that they were a publisher. And in the other cases that I cited to you, they had flip-flopped that to whether they were claiming
this doesn't show that. This doesn't show. This doesn't show that.
Other cases I cited to you.
This doesn't show that. This doesn't show that.
Is one of the many cases.
No,
it does.
What you're saying? This doesn't show that.
Platform or public forum used in this document.
And it's a dismissal on like the lamest grounds because
because
the complaint was too long.
Yes, that I understand.
Can you tell us what website you read this on so I can go read what you read, please? Because that's going to be a lot easier than deciphering it based on.
Just give me like a Breitbart link, okay?
Because I want to know it's legitimately, right?
Some of these cases I pulled up on The Verge. Here, I'll toss you this one.
See, honestly,
this is totally useless. What you just gave us, it's nothing.
I think he should have to ring Judge Moses, so he should get muted, right? Like, there's no point threatening him if you're not going to follow through.
Yeah, I know, right? It's really, really, really frustrating.
Hang on.
Call this judge at 5 a.m.
Hanging on. I've been sitting here for like 10 minutes since I threatened you the first time. I
had to find my phone.
Okay.
Holy shit.
All right.
Jesus.
We're
You're more demanding than bad customers.
Who keeps their phone on them?
Who keeps their
I
phone
do.
on? Like,
Don't you have like a? Do
Yeah.
you have like a Google? Do you have like a Google or an Alexa? Because you can just tell it to find your phone and it will ring.
No,
it.
I don't. I don't fucking trust those things. You wouldn't
You-
either if you knew what they do.
You're walking around with
Oh
an
my
Android phone. They
gosh.
have a Google in them.
Yeah, but you can disable it.
Just a reminder, his fucking router's glued onto his wall.
That was my wife's
Stop,
doing.
Stop. I just
And
gotta
I
say,
just like-
you guys better stop. Alexa is really scary. I don't
This
know
is
if you
the
ever
guy that
been in a
owns
room at
81
night.
companies.
Hold on, wait a second. Alexa's actually super fucking scary. If you're in your room at night, right, and Alexa goes off, it's fucking terrifying, right? Like, it's not a normal thing. Like here in the middle of the night.
I don't have one, but it's
Exactly.
Okay.
This is
I just think it's hilarious that he's
Eleanor, wait,
that we've been
Eleanor.
entertaining him. We've been entertaining this guy for so
Eleanor.
long, and it's
Yeah.
like kind of clear.
You must be a troll. Valinor must be a troll because like
It actually is really funny now. You see the router
Wait.
glued to the wall. Like, what the fuck is that?
Look, guys, it's a
Like
win-win for me.
he
okay?
owns 80
Either-
companies, is what he says. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
80
sorry.
troll.
He's got
I'm
he owns 80
sorry.
companies and he's glued his router to the wall.
Guys,
Like,
guys,
what the
guys,
fuck
he's
is
calling.
going
He's
on?
calling. He's calling. He's calling. He's calling. I want to hear this.
it's called Dominoes.
Get the fuck on speaker right now. Stop
Can you
this.
show us the phone? Can you show us the phone? Want to see the number you're ringing?
don't go.
Don't- you, that would get
Yeah,
prime.
don't actually show the number.
Yeah,
Stop
please.
it, you know what I-
Although, if he showed
Even
the
if he-
number,
That's 4
Even
rings
if
so
he-
far.
if it
even-
said
Wait,
555 before it, that'd be fucking
Even-
mint, dude. That'd be
Hold on,
so
this has
funny.
been
You know what?
Judge,
Even
right?
if this judge doesn't answer for whatever reason, I'm still satisfied that he's probably really annoyed that somebody called him at like 4 a.m.
There's no
Are you
judge. He's
bold of you
lying, dude.
to assume
I don't
there's
know
a
why
judge?
you guys got so naive. He's just lying.
No, who here's naive? Like, we all understand. Like, we all get it.
He's not
Also-
on speaker.
Hey, I've looked. Oh, okay.
But while we wait, just real quick, this Falinor is a troll because this link he gave us is just like a bunch of instances of all his arguments failing in court. Like here's the
Yeah.
one with Tulsi Gabbard saying that private
Oh,
web
I don't give a
platforms
shit about
aren't.
Gabbard.
Okay, I don't
Yeah.
care what it's the case, asshole. I'm not
Yeah.
saying whether or not you care about her.
No, I don't care about the Calvert case either. It was garbage. The whole
You read
argument
the
for putting
case?
it together is that they flip flop. If you read through each one, they flip flop as they,
They
have
don't.
and continue to.
Again,
But they have.
They don't.
Just link to the article that you read this off of so that we can get a better grasp of the argument. Because, like, if you can't, I'm sorry, you're not equipped to have this conversation. If you can't cite specific
Yeah. Wait, are you saying
I
that
don't
Twitter?
track the case laws in every single case document I've seen over 10 years.
Well, no,
Who the
you-
fuck
All these
does
courts,
that?
all these courts are calling.
I
all
don't
these
care
courts-
that much about 230.
So here's the thing. There's important parts of case race, right?
I mean, I
basically-
didn't have to call a judge at fucking 5
that
a.m.
judges,
but
the deciding judges will cite as saying, well, this is the reason we held this way, right? Being able to cite those is kind of important if you're having legal disputes.
Also, by
Especially
the
where
way,
you're talking something.
all these courts are saying that private social media companies are clearly private forums. Like the West Virginia court, like all these federal courts, it seems pretty consistent that these are private forum. So would you like to remove your claim or
Yeah.
have case law that's their
Yeah.
public fora?
Also, as of Twitter, I looked at the cases. As of Twitter using the 230C Act, they used under the 230C, they use the Communications Decency Act, which doesn't
Yeah.
have to do with public forum.
Yeah, it doesn't have
So-
to do at all with constitutional claims. It's the
Yeah.
statutory framework.
So maybe I was wrong.
Yeah,
And if
you're
I'm
Okay.
wrong, then I
like
apologize.
everything else I
Maybe.
said.
Maybe.
All right.
Okay.
On that,
All right, all right,
recognition,
all right.
I'm out. Much love, everyone.
All right.
Peace, go.
So
I'm not unreasonable.
I think we all like understand where that was going, but I would like to go back to the initial conversation for anybody who thinks that Donald Trump should not have been taken off of Twitter. I know that Nell didn't. Viv just jumped in if there was something she wanted to say. I didn't want to jump over. her, but-
It's fine. I mean, Twitter put a really fucking detailed statement as to like why they kicked Trump off Twitter. Like I feel like is it Nell? Yeah, like you basically said, oh, because like they said he was like inciting violence or something. Like have you read it? Like because it was really fucking detailed, right? They cited that they were taking him off Twitter in the public interest because they determined that under their glorification of violence policy, which aims to prevent the glorification of violence that could inspire others to represent violent acts, and determined that they were likely to encourage and inspire people to replicate the criminal acts that took place at the US Capitol on January 6th. And then they cited a whole bunch of ways in which Trump's tweets were being received by people who support Trump that make it likely that they could act on his tweets and his and potentially any future statements he made in a criminal fashion.
So that's actually very different than what we were talking about, because we were saying that it was about inciting violence, but you're saying it's not inciting violence, that it's glorification of violence, which is pretty straightforward, right?
Glorification of violence is, yeah, I mean, it's different, right? The idea is that glorification of violence can perpetuate violence, right? Obviously. But it's not like, and I also think that when Americans talk about inciting violence, they have a very, very sort of pigeonholed view of what that means, right? Because of the way your law works and your free speech laws work. And an incitement, like, depending on what nation you're in, is going to mean a different thing legally. I know we got Pisco in here, so there's probably been some legal arguments around incitement that I've missed. But this wouldn't be like a legal argument from Twitter either, if anybody's thinking in that sort of very restricted framework of like, well, he didn't say go out there and beat people up, right? Like incitement of violence in a colloquial rather than a legal sense. You can stretch that definition pretty bloody far, I would say, in terms of like the kinds of words and actions that are likely to result in other people committing violence.
So, Nell, do you at least agree that posting a video of people breaking down doors and breaking into the Capitol is at least glorification of violence?
No, I wouldn't say that posting a video of it is glorification of violence. I think if you were posting a video and the commentary was that this was good in some way, then it would be glorification of violence. But if it's like posting it for the purposes of reporting, or if it's got commentary alongside of it saying the horrific scenes at the Capitol, blah 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 blah, right? Like that's not glorification. That's just
sorry. We had covered like the caption earlier that he said, "I love these people." So I'm just asking with the caption and the video together, correct?
Yeah, sure. I was saying if it was just the video.
Yeah, so I still don't think this is glorification of the violence, right? Because like I don't remember seeing this thing with the caption that said like we love these people, right? But like that statement, the way he is talking about like saying that he loves these people, right? He's also like follows it by telling them to like go home, right? So I don't think like he says like we're the party of law and order, we're not the party of violence, blah blah blah. Like he's trying to suggest that basically like
very, very angry.
Yeah, so it's kind of just like this kind of, I understand you're upset, I love you because you're my supporters, but you need to go home and stop being violent. I don't see that as glorifying violence. I see that as like the kind of basically the absolute opposite of kind of saying, right, like I understand why you're upset, but like pack it in.
Cool. The impact of his words at the time though weren't that good. Right.
And also like
you have to measure it on how it's taken by the supporters as well. And
I'm just
I would also argue that if you're hinging your argument of whether or not it was a good thing for Twitter to do to ban Trump from Twitter on like whether or not they are congruent with their terms of service, I would say you're making a really shit argument. I would say that Twitter have a moral obligation to like remove Trump because of the potential of spreading of misinformation, incitement of violence, and so on. The numerous ways in which he has affected the public discourse over the last 4 years. He's got 2 weeks left in office. Just fucking get rid of him already.
Yeah, and also while the people were in the Capitol, he made that video, and it was basically just him saying, "Listen, I know you're all special, but please go home in peace. Even though our democracy is at stake and these communist dictators are taking over our country, but also please leave in space."
Right.
Like,
the whole thing of like spreading the reason that the people were there while he was telling them to go home. It's like, you know that they're for one, they don't have service there. Like none of these people that are already invading the Capitol are watching this video.
I'm not really. What is the function here of banning him from Twitter, though? As much as it feels nice to ban him from Twitter, right? He's still going to have a massive platform somewhere where he can influence these people to do the things that they've already done, right?
Well,
So I
thought he would join Parler pretty much instantly, and he hasn't.
He did.
I mean,
He already
yeah.
has an account on Parler.
The function is upholding the
find his
Twitter
account on Parler.
TOS finally
I can
after
link
like
it for you.
4
But
years of
I'm
him
talking
breaking
about
it.
the moral obligation, as Wolf brought up. I don't care that much about TOS disputes, although it's funny to watch services.
Yeah, I
The moral
think
obligation is solely on Twitter. I don't give.
Yeah.
But if
it has nothing to
think
do with
about-
anybody
no.
here. It's like
Hold on.
Twitter's
So we're
moral
talking
obligation.
about
Well, we're
there was
arguing about
specific-
whether or not it was right for Twitter to ban him. So
But there was a
I think it
specific-
was right then.
Well,
but that
it's
has
for the
nothing to do
TOS
with
thing.
morality of it.
But
That has
no,
nothing.
even-
That has nothing to do with the morality of it, though.
Even
What
separate,
do you mean it
TOS
has
says they
nothing to
can
do
ban
with the
anyone
morality
for
of
any
it?
reason at any
Because
time.
that's for Twitter to decide if it was moral. I think that
Wait,
it was the
no,
right
it's not
decision.
for
They don't
Twitter
even
to
have to be
decide if it was
moral.
moral.
Morals
The
are
TOS, they can
personal.
ban
What the fuck are
anybody.
you talking about?
Those are not
Roy?
personal.
Personally, I think it was the right thing for them to do it. But I
Okay,
think they
if
should have
you
done it
think
4
it
years
was
ago.
wait, come on, look, this is real basic fucking philosophical stuff. I don't know how you're even having a conversation about this without knowing this shit, but if you think it was the right thing to do, then you are making a moral judgment, right?
Okay.
We all get to make
Fine.
moral judgments on things.
Fine.
It is not just for Twitter to decide what is moral. It is for us to decide as a fucking community, as a society, what is moral, and then to place pressure on those
And
like
that
big old fucking
has
corporations.
nothing to
act in
do with what
accordance
Twitter
that
ended
morality.
up deciding. But I agree. It whatever.
Well, it does. It
It
does,
absolutely
right?
does.
Because if we decide
did
that
it.
it is a moral decision for Trump to be kicked off Twitter, right? Just the same as like the 100 fucking staff or whatever that like wrote to Jack Dorsey asking to get Trump kicked off Twitter, just like the congressman and so on that talked about like how Trump should be removed from Twitter, and just like the people in the general fucking public who are posting on Twitter and stuff about how Trump should be removed from Twitter. Yes, that has something to do with with fucking with Jack Dorsey and Twitter's decision to remove Trump from Twitter.
Well, again,
Fine.
it's not even about the moral piece. It's literally they can just remove you from their platform because they can choose to remove you from their platform. That's in the paperwork.
I
That's
don't think
the
anyone's
agreement you
just
sign.
I know what
the
I'm saying.
argument lies in whether they were
Yes,
right or
but
wrong.
the argument of like if
Reality.
the argument of like the law says that they can do this, therefore I have no
TOS.
problem with it, is again a shit argument. We don't determine our morality by what's legal unless you go for some sort of really bizarre convoluted social contract nonsense where you're like whatever the law decides we must decide is moral, and because then we would never change
That's a
fucking
bad
laws,
idea.
would we?
Yeah.
Right? Laws would never
But these
change,
are-
and we'd still be
these are
living under
interesting-
fucking Jim Crow or slavery.
what Trump has managed to like cool up, right, by getting all of his followers to believe this shit has already happened, right? The ones that believe this shit, that the riot already happened, right? They banned him after the
True.
riot. Makes no fucking difference whether they ban him at this point or not.
It makes a huge difference because
no,
there are
wait,
still some
because
very
he
there are
can't-
still some
he
very
can't-
important events on the calendar,
he ca-
including the inauguration. And
There-
for
there's
which
literally-
another
Yeah,
march
but the thing is
passed.
they're self
hold on.
they're
There's
self
literally-
they're self
there's
they're
literally-
self
no, no, no,
they're
I'm gonna stop
self-prepar-
this right
they're-
here. Hold on.
No,
There's
but
already
there's-
literally, because
yeah.
you're talking out your ass, there's literally already talk on Twitter about them organizing something for the
Yeah,
17th
so I was
Capitol.
gonna say, right, like they're self
And the 19th
Okay,
and
let
20th.
Nell talk, please.
yeah, they're self-propelling at this point, right? Like, so, like Trump only had to say, right, like we want to go to the Capitol building, and they went like and stormed in there, right? But before that, they were already organizing to do something similar to that on Parler, right? It's really out in the open what they're doing. For the inauguration, right? They're already organizing something, and they still will, right? Like getting Trump off Twitter doesn't mean that they
agree with
pick
you.
up
And
their
also,
Capitol
look,
deal.
That's the
I
first
agree
mistake
with
y'all
you.
are all
But
making.
Trump
Y'all are
won't be
assuming
Hold
Trump.
on. Hold
Y'all are
on.
assuming
If
Trump
they were already organizing something where they said they were going to storm the Capitol, and Trump played into that by then telling them to march to the Capitol, is that not Trump then playing into something that was already started to incite violence?
Right, because he like unironically he knew about all of that shit. Like he's the
What is-
president. Like
what is banning
he
him
knows
off-
about that being something that's being organized. Like
Yeah, no, I
he-
agree.
Yeah.
At that point, he incited violence, right? In the real life and the real time, right? When he told them to go march on the Capitol, he was inciting violence, right? However,
Yeah.
right, like getting him off Twitter now makes no fucking difference because he's already like got these people into a self-propelling frenzy where on inauguration day they will all turn up anyway. Like Trump,
I think
agree with
here,
and actually just fuel them even more.
Marx,
I agree
Marx,
with he's already made
Marx,
statements.
Marx,
If you look at the
Marx,
if you look at
I'm here.
Marx. Right.
what the fuck
Yeah.
are you shouting? Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, I think it makes a huge difference as far as like whatever precedent Twitter or the social media companies have, because now they finally gained the balls to like ban the president, even though he's the president, for inciting violence and just plain out causing a riot. So I think in the future, if anything like this does happen, where it's a representative or a president, the social media companies now have this precedent layer, like we're not going to take it anymore, and we will ban you, even if you're a representative, for breaking TOS. I think it's very important.
I think it's more symbolic to people
I agree.
than anything else, because from what I'm seeing here is that there's already other platforms that Trump's just going to go to and say the things he says, right? Like Parler and whatnot.
But none of them are as big as
And then-
Twitter,
hold
though.
on. I want to get to my conclusion.
Parler is going to die in a year.
So
I doubt it.
There's this issue.
No, if Trump gets on
There's
there.
this issue where it doesn't seem like it's really going to do anything to ban Trump, whereas it would do things. And all these other figures they've been banning. I don't know if anyone's kept track of this, but Twitter's also been banning some other conservative figures as well who are doing the Trumpianism thing, right? But the Facebook groups, right, and shit like that are where the real problem is coming from. Because if you've ever done research into this, right, how these people organize to go do these things isn't by going on like Trump's mentions and saying, let's go to Washington right now and do this. It's by communicating in the background of these applications.
Private groups.
Right? And that's where you would stop the kind of action that we saw on Capitol Hill, right? You wouldn't stop it by banning someone like Trump, which is why I'm a little confused beyond it feeling good or maybe it being a symbol. It doesn't seem like banning him did much. So it doesn't seem to be like a good or necessarily a bad in my mind. It just seems like kind of irrelevant. It doesn't really do that much to change anything.
The problem with your statement is that while you are right that people do organize a lot of the shit on Facebook and so on, right? Facebook, it also kind of takes its fucking cues from other social media platforms and pushing like Twitter pushing the button and saying, "Hey, we're gonna start banning this shit." Right? Places a degree of social pressure on other social media sites to do the same.
And Facebook also banned him.
Facebook is banning the major figures. They're not going after the actual cause of these actions. As I said, it's the groups, it's the behind the scenes messaging on these platforms.
But
the ability to communicate in that fashion that is causing them to organize like this. Not the people.
But nobody goes on Twitter. Nobody goes onto Facebook, right? Somebody who's never used social media before doesn't go onto Facebook to go and join like random private militia group 101, right? Like people get sucked into this through like varying degrees of sort of radical content, right? And they'll start out with the fucking normie bullshit. You'll be your nan or your dad or whatever going on Twitter to see what fucking Trump is saying, and then they get pulled into the rest of it.
As was brought up earlier, though, right? These swaths of people have already been recruited. Right, this is a persistent problem.
Okay, well, we probably don't want any more to be recruited.
There are
a million different reasons why this is.
And so, what I like to do is recruit you at home. If you haven't followed this channel, you should hit that follow button right now. We provide you this content 6 days a week. 6 days a week, you get craziness like this. This is a walk-on panel where members of my audience have come together to yell at each other very loudly for hours at a time.
For your entertainment.
Yes, for your entertainment and for my enrichment. Speaking on that, sub to this channel. If you haven't already subbed to this channel. Give subs if you can. If you have a Twitch Prime or Amazon Prime or Prime Gaming, you can support the channel without costing yourself a single dime. That's amazing, all right? Thank Daddy Bezos for his kind benevolence. Beyond that, you can use the PayPal button below if you also want to support the channel that way. Okay, so this has been going on forever. I sticked around. Thank you for the bits. I sticked around longer because of all the money that I got earlier today. The money's dried up though. So anyway, we're gonna raid someone. Everyone who's here, please come back. You guys are a lot of fun. We're gonna read our friend Waffles. She's amazing. She's really kind. But yeah, everyone who's on this panel, we'd love to have you back for we can yell at each other again or something. But